So, it's July now, and that means it's time for what I watched in June. I didn't really get to watch many movies in the latter half of the month as I was helping out with a local short film, which is available on YouTube, so I'll post a link in the description of this video. And also Boardwalk Empire consumed my soul. Season 3 just blew my mind. Anyway, let's get down to it. I kicked off the month with the Amazon Prime film The Vast of Night. This is a debut feature from filmmaker Andrew Patterson, and it shows a lot of potential for his future work. The whole movie takes place over one night in a small town in 1950s America, and if you've seen The Twilight Zone, then think of this as a homage to that style of sci-fi. Patterson uses the small budget extremely well and pushes the concept of small budget filmmaking to its limits. The two leads, Sierra McCormack and Jake Horowitz, are fantastic, and due to their chemistry, you never get tired of seeing them on screen together, considering they are the only two on screen for the majority of the movie. There's also some really great cinematography here, with an extremely long take of McCormack's character operating a switchboard early on that I think goes for about 11 minutes, and a brilliant tracking shot that takes us through the small town. Overall, if you like dialogue-based movies and classic sci-fi, then I think you'll love this. 4 stars. Then after watching a ton of clips from Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive, I decided to finally get around to the David Lynch short film, What Did Jack Do? And it was, well, it's Lynch. For a 17-minute short, it was pretty entertaining, and surprisingly, it wasn't the weirdest thing I've seen from Lynch. If you only have about 20 minutes to watch something and you want a little slice of weirdness, I highly recommend you check this out on Netflix. 3.5 stars. One weekend I stayed at a mate's house with some others and we decided to watch 4 classic Bond films, with the first being Live and Let Die. We all hadn't seen the Bond movies we chose for the weekend in a very long time, so we basically went in fresh and we agreed that with Live and Let Die, it was one of the strangest movies we've ever seen. Yes, we had a lot of fun with the Roger Moore debut, and there are some incredible set pieces and, of course, the incredible song. But it feels very dated. Maybe it's the fact that literally every African American in the movie are working with the bad guys, or maybe the whole voodoo subplot that kinda leads nowhere, but I feel like there are better Bond movies out there. Still, this was the most fun we had with all the 4 Bond movies we watched, and we all loved how obscure the whole movie was. 2.5 stars. We followed Live and Let Die with Sean Connery's You Only Live Twice, and God, I feel like I'm about to sadden a lot of Bond fans out there by saying that, like Live and Let Die, this is a very average movie. Sean Connery is great, don't get me wrong, and the Japanese setting is gorgeous, plus the final act is probably one of the best in all the Bond franchise. But everything else is rather lackluster. Myself and my friends all agree that the second act drags and goes on for way too long, with Bond going to this ninja camp with some incredible modern ninjas who are only ninjas who shoot guns. Then he is transformed into a Japanese man and oh my god, that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Like Live and Let Die, this is a very racist Bond movie, but the final act makes up for everything that came before it. 2.5 stars. The following night, we wanted to watch one of our favourite classic Bond movies, The Spy Who Loved Me, and it was great. Roger Moore is at his best here, and Barbara Buck, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, gives a fantastic performance as Anya Amasova. Ugh, I think I just butchered her name. And she is easily one of the best Bond girls in the entire franchise. The villain is pretty solid here with a great sea layer that is Atlantis, but it's the introduction of, well, probably the most iconic Bond henchman, Jaws. And he just makes this movie even better. I forgot how terrifying Jaws was in the film, especially earlier on when he hunts down a man through a night show at the pyramids in Egypt. Other than that, this is the best mixture of comedy and action in the Moore films, and the action alone is incredible. There's a reason this is known as one of the better Bond movies, and it's easily one of my favourites. Plus, there's the incredible opening ski chase. 4 stars. To end our Bond weekend, we watched another Roger Moore movie, Octopussy, and it wasn't that great. The whole first hour, which is dedicated to a plot centered around Fabergé eggs, doesn't really lead to anything other than a lengthy introduction to the villains, who are fine I guess, but the main henchman is pretty intimidating at times even though he doesn't really do much. The last 40 minutes is classic Bond though, with a train set piece ending with our favourite agent disguising himself as a clown to defuse a nuke in the middle of a circus. It's just the most Roger Moore thing ever. Plus there's a great stunt involving a plane which is insane. 2.5 stars. A few days later I watched Swallow and it was pretty good. I haven't been this uncomfy in a movie for a while, since it revolves around the protagonist having the urge to ingest inedible objects. The sound design alone made me squirm every time she finds a new item to swallow. It's seriously unnerving. Haley Bennett is great though as our protagonist Hunter, and everyone else does a solid job in their roles. The cinematography is gorgeous and it's well directed. My only problem with it is that I feel like it became too predictable once the halfway mark hit, and I wish some characters had bigger roles, especially one character who is talked about a lot during the film and only ends up having about one very short scene towards the end. But it's still a solid psychological thriller that isn't for the squeamish. 3.5 stars. Then one of my most anticipated movies of 2020 became available for streaming on Netflix, which of course is The Five Bloods, the latest film from Spike Lee. I was going to originally do a separate review on this, but I thought I'd save it for this video, and I might even do a video about it sometime in the near future. Firstly, this is easily one of the best movies of the year so far. Actually, yeah, no, it's my favourite so far. And it continues to prove that Netflix is actually saving the film industry instead of killing it. Similar to BlacKkKlansman, Spike Lee splices in real footage relating to the themes and setting of the film. And just to warn those of you who haven't seen The Five Bloods yet, it's very confronting stuff to watch. Then there's the story itself, which follows 4 African American vets who go back to Vietnam to find the remains of their fallen squad leader, and a cache of gold, which is a great adventure story at first, but in typical Spike Lee fashion turns into something quite dark and incredibly interesting. The use of 3 different aspect ratios also makes it an incredible looking film. Cinematographer Newton Thomas Siegel, I probably butchered his last name, makes great use of the aspect ratios, and it doesn't come across as tacky, and it just adds more to the overall experience of the movie. Then there's the performances, and I can't talk about The Five Bloods without mentioning Delroy Lindo's brilliant performance as Paul. I think he should just be automatically handed the Best Supporting Actor Oscar at this stage, because I don't think any other person can top his performance for the rest of the year. Lindo brings this intensity and damaged persona to his PTSD suffering character like no one else before. He's beyond incredible, and he steals every scene he is in. Everyone else is fantastic, but, well, yeah, Delroy Lindo is just the star of the show here. Overall, this is the best movie I've seen in 2020 so far, and I only have a few minor issues with it. 4.5 stars. Then I watched Bad Education, and this is also one of the best and craziest movies of the year. I love director Corey Finley's debut film from 2017, Thoroughbreds, and this true crime story is even better. The story, which is adapted from the New York Magazine article titled The Bad Superintendent by Robert Kolker, follows Long Island Superintendent Frank Tassone, played by Hugh Jackman, and the staff around him as they get caught up in the biggest embezzlement scandal in American history. If that doesn't already have your attention, then I'll go into it a little more. What I love about this movie is that it takes its time in setting up the characters before the main plot kicks in. We get like a solid 40 minutes of getting to know these characters, which is helped even more by Hugh Jackman's incredible charisma as Frank. This may just be my favourite performance from him, which considering some of his other roles in recent years, is very impressive. Allison Janney is just great as usual, as is the rest of the cast. The screenplay is tight and almost as witty as a Coen Brothers script, and the score is great, plus a wonderful direction. It's one of the best crime movies of the past few years, and I highly recommend watching it. 4.5 stars. Ever since 2014, I've been meaning to watch the miniseries Generation Kill, but something has always come up every time I had tried to watch it. Well, I finally watched it, and why didn't I watch this when I first heard about it? Based on Evan Wright's book about his experience as a reporter in the 2003 invasion of Iraq, The 7-episode miniseries was written by Wright himself, as well as David Simon and Ed Burns, who are most well known for their work behind The Wire. If you like the realism of The Wire, then you'll love the realism shown here just over a few weeks in the Iraq War. The characters, who are based on real soldiers Wright wrote on and spent time with, are well written, and the performances from the excellent ensemble are even better. Hell, one of the soldiers is actually played by himself, which is something I didn't know until after finishing it. Even if the series is just 7 hours of American soldiers joking, yelling and singing hilarious covers of pop songs from the late 90s and early 2000s, Generation Kill is one of the best representations of what modern war is really like, and it's some of the most enjoyable TV I've ever seen. 4.5 stars. With the 5 Bloods still fresh in my mind a week after watching it, I rewatched Apocalypse Now, and I really don't have much to say about it. It's iconic for a reason, and it's simply one of the greatest movies of all time. 5 stars. Then I decided to watch a horror movie I've heard about for years now, which is Wrong Turn. To be honest, for a movie centered around a bunch of cannibalistic inbreds hunting down boring characters, I've seen better versions of this concept. There is some great stuff in here with solid and quite impressive cinematography at times, cool special effects, and a great opening. But the rest of the movie felt really meh to me. Maybe I've just seen so many horror movies that are crazy similar that I need something original in my life. Or it may also be that I've heard solid things about these movies, but I wasn't really a fan of it, to be honest. 2 stars. I ended the month with a rewatch of the 3-part Netflix comedy improv series, Middleditch and Schwartz. Thomas Middleditch and Ben Schwartz are 2 of the best comedians working today, and this series proves just how smart they are. The way they perform their improv is beyond crazy, and the results are some of the most hilarious bits of comedy I've seen in quite some time. Leading up to this year, I wasn't the biggest fan of improv comedy, but now after a second viewing of this, Middleditch and Schwartz has turned me. It's seriously impressive, and it's some of the best comedy available for streaming. And there's also the chemistry between the two, which makes this pretty much perfect. 5 stars. And that's all I've watched in June. I know this video has came out pretty late, but I've had a surprisingly busy month, and I was almost considering combining this with what I watched in July, but now that would be too much for you to handle, as I've watched a lot more recently. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm Andy, and see you next time.